Good afternoon. Welcome to the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research's webinar on FSR's Patient Registry. I'm Chase Hamilton, FSR Senior Research Coordinator. Just a quick bit of housekeeping before we get started. Your phone will be muted. However, we would like to encourage you to ask questions. There's a chat box located in the bottom of your screen. Type your questions into this box throughout the presentation. We have disabled the Q&A box, so please use the chat for questions. We will have a question and answer period at the end of this webinar. This webinar will be recorded and will live on our website. I am now pleased to introduce Mary McGowan, FSR CEO, to kick us off today.
Thank you, Chase, and thank you all for joining us to learn more about sarcoidosis research and specifically the importance of the FSR Patient Registry. Through the FSR Patient Registry, the power to advance our understanding of sarcoidosis and to provide a clear picture of the ways the disease impacts the daily lives of those it impacts is in your hands. During the next hour, you will learn about the extraordinary impact already being made thanks to the over 5,500 individuals who have shared their experiences, along with our hope for ways this may shape advancements towards a cure and better support in the future. I would like to take a moment to express our gratitude to the Gies Foundation for their generous support, which has made today's webinar possible. Let's start with why we need research at all. First, research helps us understand the cause of disease. If we don't know the cause of the disease and how it impacts people, finding better treatments and a cure is impossible. Also, research helps us understand how the disease progresses. Since sarcoidosis, also known as the snowflake disease, impacts people differently, we must unearth trends to help us identify what treatments might or might not work for particular individuals and recognize when more or less monitoring is necessary and how better to improve quality of life. Research also helps us understand how it impacts individuals' everyday lives and what symptoms matter most. If we know how it impacts people's lives, we can make the case for more support, make the case to legislators and regulators for more research funding. If we know what symptoms matter most, we can be sure the research for better therapies is addressing those symptoms of the highest priority. If fatigue is the symptom impacting your life the most, it signals for researchers the need to look for therapies to assist with fatigue. Research also helps us test new therapies to help alleviate symptoms and improve quality of life and ultimately find a cure. We can only advance the field if we have enough people engaging in research. It is important that everyone participate in research. Again, sarcoidosis is often called the snowflake disease because no two individuals have the same experiences. That is why in sarcoidosis, more so than in other conditions, we need everyone to share their experiences and to participate in clinical trials. The path to a cure is carved through participation and engagement. FSR is dedicated to accelerating research through an innovative multidisciplinary approach. With your generous support, FSR has been able to make huge strides forward towards a better understanding of the cause of sarcoidosis, a deeper understanding of its impact on patients' daily lives, and an advancement towards better treatment and an eventual cure. With the support of this extraordinary community, FSR has funded over $6 million in sarcoidosis research and has provided over 46 research grants to clinicians and academic researchers. The funding that FSR has provided continues to have significant impact in the field, leading to over $15 million in funding from the NIH, a disease model that is now being utilized by industry in drug development and to improve clinical guidelines for better treatment pathways. Furthermore, FSR has taken a leadership role in working with industry and pharmaceutical companies to ensure that the patient voice is at the center of the search for better treatments and to provide support to advance clinical trials. We are proud to share that just last year at this time, there was just one active sponsored clinical trial. And now there are 10 sponsored clinical trials in progress. FSR continues to seek new pharmaceutical partners and is proud to support current pharmaceutical partners' efforts to ensure the patient voice remains at the center of every step of this critically important research. Just this year alone, FSR will fund $285,000 in sarcoidosis research through our fellowship grant, partner grants with other organizations, our 2 pilot grants to provide support for early stage research, and our new cardiac sarcoidosis grants. FSR is proud that through this funding, we are able to support new and innovative researchers and to help provide these researchers the structure and support to advance in careers dedicated to improving the lives of those living with sarcoidosis. FSR works diligently to provide support of our clinics, clinicians, and researchers, and make it possible for the improvement of care and patient support at the local level. In May of this year, FSR launched the FSR Global Sarcoidosis Clinic Alliance. This alliance is a member program consisting of clinics, hospitals, and individual providers committed to finding a cure and offering evidence-based patient-centric care for those living with sarcoidosis. We are thrilled to share that in just a few short months, 32 founding members have joined this extraordinary effort and have committed to engaging in collaborative efforts to identify and implement clinical best practices to improve patient outcomes, provide support at the local level through FSR's peer-led local support groups, raise awareness at the local level with the support of FSR's community outreach leaders, and to come together to advance research and to work towards a cure. FSR is committed to keeping the patient at the center of research. Over the years, we have established patient advisory groups that provide insight, review materials, and provide feedback on materials associated with clinical trials. We've also led patient focus groups for industry leaders to provide them with a clear understanding of the patient's needs and hopes for new therapies. FSR has also been taking a leadership role to ensure that the FDA and NIH have a better understanding of the need for more funding for sarcoidosis research and a better understanding of the disease and its impact on the lives of patients. Finally, FSR has conducted and continues to conduct surveys of the community to identify gaps and focus research efforts. Some of these surveys are isolated to a topic and others are conducted through the FSR Patient Registry. In fact, just this week, FSR launched a new survey as part of the second phase of the Ignore No More campaign. This survey, which is part of the Act Now campaign to advance clinical trials for equity in sarcoidosis, is aimed at increasing understanding of Black Americans' attitudes, knowledge, and experience with clinical trials and barriers to participation. Because African Americans have the highest prevalence and worst outcomes in sarcoidosis, it is critical that we have appropriate representation of this population in research and clinical trials. We know that by improving access to trials and understanding of how this disease impacts those most severely impacted, we can advance the science and improve the lives of all impacted by the disease. If you are a Black American living with sarcoidosis, I hope you will consider taking this newly launched national survey so we can improve clinical trials for all impacted by sarcoidosis. It is critical for us to hear from you if we are to build on these efforts to advance research in sarcoidosis. Your voice not only matters, but is the backbone to these advancements. All research starts with the patient. Through the FSR Patient Registry, you can help us have a deeper understanding of how the disease impacts you, provide insights on how the disease progresses and what other conditions are correlated with sarcoidosis, and give us a better sense of the daily impact of the disease. You will soon hear from others on why this is so vitally important to advancing research and better care. I will close with expressing my deep gratitude to the over 5,500 individuals from 58 countries who have participated in the patient registry. It is through their generous sharing of their experiences and their passion that we can have the infrastructure to have 10 sponsored clinical trials underway. Large strides can be taken to improve diagnosis and clinical care. Join us. The future of sarcoidosis research is in our hands. I will turn it back over to Chase. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for providing all this wonderful information about FSR's initiatives. Next, I would like to introduce Gary Faro, an FSR patient advocate, to say a few words.
Thank you, Chase. I have sarcoidosis in my lungs, eyes, skin, bones, sinuses, and possibly the brain. I'm an FSR patient advocate. I joined the FSR Patient Registry in 2021 because I believe the saying that knowledge is power, or in this case, data is power. Every patient with sarcoidosis needs to be a part of the FSR Patient Registry. The future of sarcoidosis is in our hands, literally. We are the sources of information on how sarcoidosis impacts our health and our lives. Without the registry, researchers and clinicians are posting help-wanted sarcoidosis patients throughout the world and the country and hoping someone answers the call. With less than 200,000 of us in the US, that is almost lottery number odds in locating a sarcoidosis patient. The patient registry gives them a guaranteed source of sarcoidosis patient and information. The registry survey questions were easy to understand and fill out. I just updated my survey after getting my annual reminder from FSR. Our health and medications do change, and you want to make sure that your information is kept up to date. You are able to fill out the survey all at once, or if you get interrupted, you're able to save what you've started and then come back to it when you have more time. If you haven't already opened the FSR website at stopsarcoidosis.org, go to the Take Action button and begin entering in your registry information. Do it now. Thank you for your time. And Chase, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Gary, for that powerful statement. So now share my screen here. So now I would like to introduce Dr. Logan Harper. Dr. Harper is a pulmonologist at Cleveland Clinic. He focuses his clinical time on providing comprehensive care for sarcoidosis patients as part of Cleveland Clinic's Sarcoidosis and Interstitial Lung Disease Center. His research interests include developing patient-centered interventions to reduce health disparities in sarcoidosis related to race and income, as well as novel sarcoidosis treatments. So I will stop sharing. Dr. Harper, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming, and I want to thank the FSR for letting me share about how the sarcoidosis patient registry has been really helpful to our research at Cleveland Clinic, and also how it has changed how we provide sarcoidosis care to our patients. So my goal for this talk is that all of you feel comfortable that you know what the FSR Patient Registry is and how it can benefit patients. First, I want to describe what the registry is. Then I want to go through the types of questions that are in the registry and discuss how these questions provide unique and important knowledge. Next, I want to go over how to enroll in the project. And finally, I want to give a brief overview of some of the work I've done with the registry to give a real life example of how the registry can be used. The FSR Patient Registry is an online survey that allows sarcoidosis patients to answer questions about all aspects of their sarcoidosis, the disease, their treatment, and the social effects of the disease. As you've heard, the treatment is available to any patient from anywhere all over the world who has sarcoidosis. The survey is pretty extensive with 78 questions, but it can be completed in 30 to 45 minutes. Most importantly, all of your information will be kept confidential and not shared with anyone who hasn't submitted an approved research project to the FSR. Even then, your name will not be shared with anyone. The real strength of the FSR Patient Registry is that it asks questions about information that clinicians often don't have good data about. This can provide information to help us design projects to improve gaps in sarcoidosis care that would otherwise go overlooked. I want to go through the sections of the survey and pull out some of the questions that I think highlight the ways that the FSR Patient Registry is able to provide information that will improve patient care. The first section focuses on diagnosis. I have 3 sample questions on this slide. These questions are looking at the delay in diagnosis for sarcoidosis patients. In my clinic, I frequently hear patients tell me that it took months or even years after they developed symptoms to finally get the diagnosis. It's really hard to find data on how often that is happening in the medical record. And this survey helps us identify ways that we can improve the diagnostic pathway of sarcoidosis. The second section of the questionnaire focuses on organ involvement in sarcoidosis. There are questions for the most commonly involved organs, lungs, skin, eyes, and organs that can have the most severe effects, heart and the nervous system. Finally, there are questions about the endocrine system that ask about some of the often overlooked symptoms of sarcoidosis, like depression, fatigue, and fibromyalgia, and also the side effects of steroid treatment, such as diabetes, obesity, and sleep apnea. This section is incredibly important for sarcoidosis researchers. We know that every case of sarcoidosis is different, and knowing what organs are involved is very important for us being able to see if there are certain problems that are more common in certain types of sarcoidosis. Again, it can be really hard to get data like this from the electronic medical record because of all the different hospital systems sarcoidosis patients often end up going to. The third section of the questionnaire focuses on medication history. This section lets us see if there are any variation in prescription patterns across regions or social demographics. Also, seeing what types of medications patients are getting for other conditions can also give us a hint at the quality of care sarcoidosis patients are receiving. The next section of the questionnaire, I think, is one of the most important. This section has many questions and can at times feel repetitive to patients. But there are very important reasons for these questions. This section includes multiple validated questionnaires which have been used to measure quality of life, pain, and the effect of sarcoidosis on your daily life. These questionnaires have been used in large numbers of patients with other diseases. So they give us a very high quality look at how sarcoidosis affects patients' lives. This section is also important because we can't get these questionnaires from the medical record. This also brings awareness to all of the symptoms of sarcoidosis that don't show up on medical tests: fatigue, missing work, or the financial burden of the medical treatments. We hope to use this data to identify groups of patients who are experiencing severe burdens from sarcoidosis that need to be addressed with future interventions. The final section of the survey focuses on demographics. This section lets researchers know social factors, insurance, school, income, as well as ethnicity. There has been a lot of work in other diseases showing that social factors and genealogies play an important role in disease outcomes. Some examples of questions this could help answer would be: 1, does having private insurance mean you are more likely to get advanced treatments compared to government insurance? Or 2, do people with differing ancestries have different organ manifestations? The FSR registry has been extremely effective for developing research that helps patients. Using the combination of disease data like organ involvement, social factors, race, and outcome questions, depression and pain, Dr. Divya Patel from University of Florida was able to show that Hispanic patients with sarcoidosis have more peripheral nerve involvement or pain and were more likely to lose their job than non-Hispanic patients. This data will be important in helping us tailor programs for the unique needs of various groups. Dr. David Boffman from Cincinnati was able to use the registry to email out a short 3-question survey about COVID infection during the COVID epidemic to give us some of the first data about patients' risk for COVID. Being a part of the registry gives patients the opportunity to have a real impact on increasing our knowledge about sarcoidosis and identifying specific patient types who are currently underserved, whether that be patients with anxiety, low income, or patients with specific organ involvement. I hope that after hearing about all the good that can come from being a part of the FSR Patient Registry, you are interested in learning how to sign up. So now I want to shift gears and show you how to do just that. To find the registry, first go to the FSR website at stopsarcoidosis.org. You will see a button that says Join the Sarcoidosis Patient Registry. I've put a red arrow on the link. After clicking on the link, you will be brought to the registry page. Here, you can click on the register button to go to the page and learn more information about the registry. Clicking on this link brings you to a page with more information, as well as an email address if you have questions about the registry. After you read this section, you can move on to the consent form, create an account, and start participating. To make all of this less abstract, I wanted to provide a description of my experience working with the FSR Patient Registry to provide examples of questions that the FSR Patient Registry is uniquely situated to answer. Early in my training at Cleveland Clinic, I was struck by how factors such as insurance and costs could cause severe issues with treating my sarcoidosis patients. We wanted to gather data to show that we needed to dedicate special attention toward ensuring that all patients had equal access to sarcoidosis care. Working with the FSR, we were able to easily get the data from many sarcoidosis patients from all over the country. We were able to use the survey data from 2,300 patients, much more than if we had just looked at sarcoidosis patients from one clinic. This is a figure from our results. When we analyze data, the general process, regardless of the statistical model used, is to try to look for factors that are associated with an outcome. In this example, our outcome was using a walker or wheelchair. We were trying to figure out what are the risk factors for someone with sarcoidosis not being able to walk on their own. We looked at all the patients in our sample, and we found that the 6 factors listed on the left of the figure were more common in patients who were unable to walk. Using a statistical method called random forest modeling, we were able to calculate which of the factors was most important. The more important a factor was, the farther to the right the dot would be. In this example, you can see that patients who were having problems walking were more likely to be older, which makes sense, and were more likely to have neurologic involvement from their sarcoidosis. Also makes sense. Worryingly, we saw that lower income individuals or those on government insurance were also more likely to be having trouble walking, perhaps showing that lower income individuals were not getting the same high quality care. I want to highlight one more time that many of the variables we looked at here, walker use, income, insurance, are not usually included in data we pull from medical records. So finding these associations would have been very challenging without the FSR Patient Registry and the patients who took the time to fill out these surveys. Working with the FSR Patient Registry allowed us to discover important associations that would not otherwise have been found. More importantly, we were able to use the data to design interventions that will improve sarcoidosis care for everyone. The FSR is, as you've heard, using the data to inform their development of the Ignore No More campaign to develop programs to improve care for Black patients with sarcoidosis. At the Cleveland Clinic, we took what we learned from the registry and developed a patient advisory council of sarcoidosis patients to help us understand more fully the obstacles patients at Cleveland Clinic are facing. The council resulted in a stronger collaboration with the Cleveland Clinic Wellness Center, allowing sarcoidosis patients to have access to acupuncture, mindfulness, nutritional support, and exercise. Additionally, we were able to use the data to obtain a grant to develop an intervention to improve care for Black sarcoidosis patients. I want to briefly discuss a couple statistical concepts to help you understand why having more patients is important and why completing the whole survey is important. The first concept's relatively simple. When we are looking for associations like the ones I described on the previous slides, we are able to see more associations the more samples we have. I think of this like the story of a group of people trying to figure out what an elephant is using only the sense of touch. A single data point can be easily misinterpreted. Many data points can be put together to give a full picture of what's going on. A more complicated concept involves problems with missing data. When we are looking for associations using current statistical methods, missing data is a real problem. The algorithms we use cannot run if there is missing data. To deal with this, we have two options. The first, and often the best, is only analyzing the participants for whom we have complete data. This is the path our statisticians recommended for the paper that I mentioned earlier about the walker. Remember how I said we analyzed data from 2,300 participants? For the figure I showed you, we were only able to use data from 1,000 of the participants because of missing data. This reduces our ability to accurately determine associations, and worse, we miss out on learning from the experiences of patients who didn't answer questions, even if they only missed one. For this reason, when you're taking a survey, try to answer all the questions, because if you leave questions blank, it's possible that your questions won't be able to be used. In the spirit of completeness, there are other statistical ways of handling missing data. These are called imputation and involve various methods of the researcher making up what the participants' answers would have been if they hadn't left the question blank. In this example on the right, the researchers use the average value of the column for the missing values. The goal is to pick values that won't swing the data one way or another, but allow us to keep the data for all the questions the participant did answer. This lets us use all the data, but it makes it very likely that we are missing out on patients' unique experiences. The take-home message here is that if you want your questions to have the most weight, completing all of them is very important. In summary, the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Patient Registry is a unique opportunity for sarcoidosis patients to ensure that sarcoidosis clinicians and researchers are focusing on all aspects of sarcoidosis, not just the issues that can be measured by medical tests. The data patients provide to the registry is kept under strict confidentiality, and only the information needed for a particular project is given out, and only after the project has been reviewed by the FSR. The registry provides a powerful tool for sarcoidosis researchers and is available to researchers all over the world. Sarcoidosis patients have the power through completing the survey to provide information that will lead to improvements of care for all sarcoidosis patients. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Harper, for all that insightful information. Will you
here it is.
share the screen? And then I will this PowerPoint. So our next speaker is FSR's Chief Strategy Officer, Tricia Shivas.
Thank you so much, Chase, and thank you as well, Dr. Harper, for all that wonderful information. And thank you to everyone who has been posting questions into the chat. We will have a question and answer session following me in this next session. So please do continue to put your questions into the chat so we can continue to be prepared to answer them. If you go to the next slide, please. So I just wanted to share a little bit, and you learned a little bit of this from Dr. Harper in what he is doing currently with the research and trying to explore different pieces of the research. But I wanted to share with you a little bit of the insights that we do receive by looking at the data. And this is just a kind of glance at that data. The data can be looked at in many different ways, as Dr. Harper already shared, and is critically important in helping us to drive many different aspects. One of the things that we looked at was the types of breathing assistants and devices that are being used by patients. And you can see here that there are a number of different breathing devices that have been used by individuals living with sarcoidosis. The reason that this is important is it's really critically important for us as we're thinking about what kinds of needs the patients might have and what kinds of access we need to make sure that patients have with regard to insurance coverage and medical devices being available. So you can see here that we look at this different information and we see there are a lot of individuals that have or are using inhalers, a number of individuals that are using oxygen. And we know there are some challenges for the community in getting access to oxygen and having oxygen function in the way that individuals need to. Being able to have this type of information makes it possible for us to be able to move forward and advocate in the best way possible for all of you. Next slide, please. We also, as you heard from Dr. Harper, have looked at individuals' mobility. And mobility plays a role in a number of different ways that we can engage at FSR in order to support you. By understanding that there are mobility challenges for individuals living with sarcoidosis, it helps us as we continue to advocate for more support from a disability standpoint. It also helps us because it shows the progression of the disease, which is critically important when we're having conversations with folks at the NIH and the FDA in order to show that this is a very impactful disease on individuals' lives. There are many ways that we show this, but one of the things that is very salient for this population is the understanding of how it can impact someone's mobility and limit the ways that they can engage in the community. You can see here that over 50% of individuals in our community are using canes to support them as they are living their daily lives. 17% have wheelchairs and 24% have walkers. This shows that their lives have been severely impacted by the disease and that we need to do more in order to get more research funding into the space and more support available for all who are living with the disease. Next slide, please. Another thing that Dr. Harper brought up was understanding the time to diagnosis. This is critically important for us as we continue to work on your behalf every day in advocating and engaging with researchers, the FDA, the NIH, and others. You can see here that a significant number of people have gone 4 years or more to get their diagnosis. And as we often say, lost time to diagnosis means damage to organs that cannot be replaced. We need better activation on this. And this is a big point for us to better understand as we're moving forward with other organizations through our collaborations with organizations like the Every Life Foundation or Global Genes and others in order to move forward the needs for the patients that we have. In fact, this also influences the research that we are focusing on. As you know, we have recently received the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative Rare as One grant, and one of the areas of focus for us is to improve the time to diagnosis. We can't wait to activate on this, and we have moved forward in this area to try to create a framework that can improve diagnosis for all and not have people go on such a circuitous path to get that diagnosis that they need. Next slide, please. The burden of the disease is a big piece of what we look at. And Dr. Harper talked about how important it is for you to fill out questions, even if they seem repetitive, if you are engaging in the registry. The reason for this is it helps us really understand from a day-to-day standpoint what is happening for you with the disease. This also is a big influence on the FDA in how they prioritize which different types of drugs are approved over the others. And so you can see when you're looking at the health limitations and activity for sarcoidosis, unfortunately, all surveyed have experienced limitations. And it is critically important for us as we continue to fight every day for better treatments and a cure, that we can demonstrate that our community is saying that this is impacting their daily lives. This helps us as we work with insurance companies to get better coverage of care. It helps us as we work with pharmaceutical partners and with the FDA to get more drugs in the space. And it helps us as we provide day-to-day service support for all of you through our programming and support work. Next slide, please. The other piece that came up is financial burden, and this is something we also examine very closely here. You can see here that there is a significant financial burden for individuals. And the question we have here is whether you have left a job due to sarcoidosis. You can see almost over 45 or close to 45% of individuals have expressed that they have needed to leave a job because of sarcoidosis. This is a definite issue for those living with sarcoidosis, and very recently FSR has put together a campaign to work to provide more resources for those that are struggling for financial support. We have a whole website that we have developed for you, and we will send this out as part of the follow-up today. And a lot of resources that we tap into by building relationships with other organizations to make sure that we can help in that financial burden. Next slide, please. The future of sarcoidosis is in our hands. We need you to join with us and with academic researchers like Dr. Harper and pharmaceutical companies and the FDA and the NIH and others. We need your information, and you are at the center of all of this work. We encourage you to please join the FSR Patient Registry. Your experience matters. Your experience is crucial to moving this forward. And with that, we're going to start with some questions. And I encourage my other panelists to please put on your cameras so that we can have kind of an open discussion through this. So I want to start with a question that I saw in the chat, which is, I will direct to Dr. Harper. And Dr. Harper, there's some questions about why you have to update the registry so often, and why is it important that you do it over a year as opposed to whenever something changes in your care. Could you explain that, please?
Sure. So I'll start off with why it is important to update. One of the best parts of the FSR registry is that we get the data over time with sarcoidosis patients. We know that sarcoidosis is a disease that behaves differently in everyone. Some patients have worsening. Some patients have improvement without any treatment. And updating the registry every year lets researchers and clinicians understand what the course of sarcoidosis is looking like and how those courses of sarcoidosis outcomes impact patients on a daily level. And this helps us focus resources on patients who are being overlooked. I think once a year is a good time frame. More than that's just very burdensome for patients, and we like having regularly scheduled updates so that all of the data looks the same and we're able to draw really strong conclusions from it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harper, for that information. I saw a question in there as well about how to know about updating the registry, and hopefully that does answer the question. You will be pinged once you do put in your information into the registry once a year as a reminder to put that in. And as Dr. Harper said, this is really important for research. We do need a standardization for that research. It's critically important. Mary, I will direct this question to you. There's a question about, with regard to the registry, why it's important for research to focus in part on African Americans, and why we have seen so much work being done right now recently on African Americans in both the registry and in other research. Could you speak a little bit to us why this is an important piece in our work?
Oh, thank you for that outstanding question. It's critically important, again, because African Americans have the highest prevalence of the disease and worse outcomes. We believe strongly that if we can get a better understanding of their experience living with sarcoidosis, it will help everyone living with sarcoidosis. So it's critically important for us to make sure that there is sufficient representation of African Americans in sarcoidosis clinical trials, and other research that is being done. And again, this is the effort behind the national survey that we just sent out, that we're hoping African Americans will take the time to input the information about their experiences with sarcoidosis, and that actually everybody on this webinar will help us expand the reach for that survey, because we are looking for a very robust outcome that we will be sharing at the national level and with researchers that we know will have a direct impact on the future of sarcoidosis research. So this is why FSR is focusing in this area, as well as many, many other areas. But this is having to do with the Ignore No More campaign and the Act Now campaign. And we are just very grateful to everybody for joining us in this very important effort. And thank you again for this question.
Thank you. Gari, I have a question for you now. As someone who's recently filled out the survey and has become part of the survey, can you share a little bit about what it means when you are getting involved in the registry? And does it mean you are automatically volunteering for other studies? What do you know about how that works? And we're happy to chime in on that second question as well.
Sure. I'll kind of start with the first one. The second question first is that you're not volunteering yourself for any particular study. It is a data collection entry initially. If there's a particular match, FSR actually reaches out to you first and says, hey, we have a particular company that is doing a study. Would you be interested because you fit that demographic that they're looking for? You say yes or no. I've done a couple of, one I was thankfully not eligible for because I did not have that particular manifestation. Another, it was a data collection, which for me as a patient, which ties back into your first question, kind of helps me reconcile some of this information in my head and make me think back on the course of my disease and how you get used to living with certain things that you don't think it's an issue until someone asks you the question. You're like, oh, I guess that would be something that I do need to address more often, or I didn't think about, and let me talk to my physician, or I need to find out more information about this. Let me go to the FSR site. Let me start digging because I just didn't think about it until someone asked me the question.
Thank you so much for that wonderful thought on that. We received a question, Mary, and I'm wondering if you might be able to chime in here about how the work that is coming out of the registry, as we noted, there are a number of disabilities. Will this be able to help play a role in helping to drive change in disability law and disability practices?
Yes, that's an excellent question as well, and thank you so much for bringing that up. First of all, I just want to give everyone a little perspective on the advocacy work that FSR is doing on a regular basis. It's critically important that policies and things that meet the needs of those living with sarcoidosis are advocated for at the federal level on an ongoing basis, including disabilities. I hope many of you may have heard, we're getting ready to send out an official announcement, but we've just opened up a Washington, D.C. office this month. And I think that speaks volumes to our increased work in this important area to make sure that federal policies and again, policies that meet the needs of those living with sarcoidosis and other rare diseases are at the forefront. We've done a lot of work and continue to work with the NIH and FDA, as was mentioned previously, and we're continuing to enhance these efforts on disabilities and other areas. So thank you again for the question.
Great, thank you so much. I also seen a number of different questions about, and this is a question for Dr. Harper, with regard to the ways that we can capture comorbidities and how that might be something that we can look at other studies that are also capturing information on comorbidities. How do you see research being able to tap into information about other diseases that people living with sarcoidosis might be impacted by?
Thank you. That's a really good, a really great question. One thing we're very focused on at Cleveland Clinic, and many sarcoidosis centers are, is broadening our view of what the severe manifestations of sarcoidosis are. A lot of times I see that fatigue is overlooked by other doctors. And we know that fatigue is one of the more disabling symptoms from sarcoidosis. So I think the registry is very helpful in giving us all of the data we need to lobby insurance companies, educate doctors, lobby government, so that people know that sarcoidosis isn't only scarring of the lung. It is fatigue, it is depression, it is fibromyalgia, and that these symptoms can be just as disabling as the scarring symptoms we see in organs.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. I have another question here for Gary, and this question has to do with whether or not clinicians and researchers have access to your private information. As someone who has just recently signed on and is aware of the ways that the registry works, would you share a little bit about how the information is shared through FSR?
When the clinicians reach out to FSR, they're given, I believe it was Dr. Harper who mentioned this, and also Mary, that they are given redacted information. No personal information is given to a clinician or a researcher. It is more of, here's what I've been diagnosed with and some of the information that I put in the survey. If based off of the information they've received from FSR, if they feel that I would be a match for their particular study, they reach back out to FSR. FSR is the intermediary. They're the ones who actually reach out to me and say, would you be willing to take part in this particular study? And if so, would you be okay with us releasing your information, contact information to this particular company? I get to choose how they reach out to me. Or if they reach out to me at all, because my circumstances might have changed, or I'm just not willing or interested in that particular study at that moment. I hope that's
Yes, thank you.
clarifies.
That's very helpful. And many times you will be, I will chime in here for a moment as well. Many times we will find a study that might be of interest to you, and we will forward you information and you can take it from there. So it's another opportunity for you to get information about studies that are going on that you might not learn about through other pathways. But again, that information does not include your private health. It does not include your personal information. No one will be contacting you. And all the information that researchers like Dr. Harper receive is collective data, not any one individual's data. We never ever have a survey cut out that way. So it's really important for people to understand it's a collection of the data. Mary, this question is for you. We had a question about whether or not the registry is representative of the globe or other countries or just the US. Could you say a little bit about that?
Oh, thank you again. A great question. So it is global. It is a patient registry with many countries represented. We're actually looking to grow our global representation to ensure that we are gathering information at the global level from sarcoidosis patients living in different countries. Again, this is critically important to understand their experiences living with sarcoidosis. Correct me if I'm wrong, Trish, I think it's 47 countries that we have represented.
We're up to 58 countries represented.
58, we've grown. Wow, 58
Yes.
countries. Congratulations, everybody. That's amazing. We have 58 countries. So again, critically important. We are working in this area to grow it. Thank you for the question. And I hope that folks listening in today from international countries will seriously consider joining the registry and joining your colleagues in this important effort. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. So we have also received a number of questions with regard to understanding how, I'm just sorry, 1 second. I want to make sure I'm saying this correctly. How the research itself is able to advance other research. So specifically why there are not as many drugs in the space and what this research can do in order to help advance research. Dr. Harper, I wonder if you might be able to weigh in on how you see this information being critical in helping us get better drug development.
Thank you. So I think this research has multiple ways in which it'll be helpful for drug development. The first is it'll help us identify groups of sarcoidosis patients who are having the worst symptoms. A trick with drug development is when you design the trial, you need to have a good outcome that you are measuring. And the registry lets us see, hey, a group of cardiac sarcoidosis patients has really bad outcomes. This is a good group of patients to target for a clinical trial. And once the drug has been shown to be useful in cardiac sarcoidosis, we'll then be able to expand it to other manifestations of the disease. So I think this is a really good example about how focusing on a smaller group of people with a more severe manifestation will speed up clinical trials and then ultimately help everyone faster than if we had started by focusing on everyone all at once. I think that answers the question.
It does. And then, the last question that we have time for before I give all the panelists a chance to say just one last thing before we close. So give you guys a second to think about what you would like to say. We have seen a number of questions coming in with regard to military information, with regard to the data that are in the registry. And so what I would say is this is a very big priority for the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. We understand that there is a much higher risk for sarcoidosis as a result of being in the military. And this is an area that we continue to work really closely on. Some of you may have learned recently, a legislation was passed called the PACT Act. And this is something that FSR has been part of the advocacy for. The PACT Act, which is not easy to say, does help individuals that have been diagnosed who have been part of the military, specifically post 9/11 military, who have been exposed to burn pits, who have a higher risk, unfortunately, of sarcoidosis due to their military service. So FSR has been working on that legislation, and this is an area that we want to continue to support military individuals. And I will ask Mary if there's any additional stuff that you would like to add on from a strategy standpoint from FSR with regard to the military as well.
Thank you, Tricia, for that great answer. Yes, I think it's interesting to share, as Tricia was saying, this is a really critically important area for FSR to grow and expand in. And with our new Sarcoidosis Clinic Alliance that I was talking about, we are now investigating ways that we can do some capacity building and working directly with clinics in the veteran community that are serving a high percentage of sarcoidosis patients, that we can collaborate with them through a unique initiative for capacity building, as I said, to glean a better understanding and to work with them much more closely than we have been on efforts associated with the veteran community. So stay tuned for this upcoming growth in this area. And we really look forward to this critically important work and working more closely with our patients who are veterans on these critically important initiatives. So thank you again for that great question.
Great, thank you. And with that, what I'd like to do is go round robin. I'm going to ask Gary to start us off and say, what if you had one message that you were going to give to those that are listening to this webinar with regard to the patient registry? What is that message and what would you like to share?
Getting diagnosed with sarcoidosis actually, for me, left me feeling powerless. And having little control over what was going to happen to me next. And I've had this experience going to different specialists and telling, here's what has been occurring with me. But of course, when you're going to a specialist, they're interested into that one section. Let's talk about your skin, or let's talk about this. Not let's look at the entire story. Going in and filling out the registry actually made me feel as if I was helping further research into this disease, so that maybe someone else who gets newly diagnosed wouldn't go through some of the things that I went through. And I've heard from other patients who've actually had worse stories. So you start feeling, okay, mine wasn't as bad. It actually gave me a sense of power in that I was helping. I was doing something other than me going to a specialist and saying, someone help me. I was actually helping someone else, is the way I view it. So I think the patient registry is a perfect way to share that information as a whole, so that you would help clinicians maybe find a cure, if not a better medication or medications than some of the options that we currently have that are approved.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Dr. Harper, I will leave the same question to you. If you could leave one message with all of those that are attending this webinar about the patient registry, what is that message that you would like to leave?
I think the message I would want to leave is that all of us in the sarcoidosis research community are very dedicated to making sure that we are able to provide knowledge that'll improve care for sarcoidosis patients. And this registry is really one of patients' best ways, I think, to really impact sarcoidosis care without having to do very much. And I really want to say thank you to everyone who has contributed to the registry, and really applaud the patients who took the time to do this really important work.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harper, and thank you again for sharing the insights on how you've utilized the registry. We're looking forward to more research coming out of the work that you're doing with us as well. And then, Mary, I'm going to leave it to you. I'm going to pass it over to you to share your final thoughts on this as well. And then what we will do is, when we close out, just so everyone knows, you will have a survey. We ask you to please take that survey. There are also a number of resources that we will be sending to you in an email follow-up, so please look for that. It includes the survey to the Act Now survey if you are a Black American and would like to participate in that. It will include the link to the registry, and we anticipate that all of you will be signing up and joining us in this great effort. And it will include some other additional resources and information that may be of help to you. So please keep an eye out for that. And with that, Mary, would you please close us out?
Right. Yes, thank you, Tricia. So first of all, thank you so much, Dr. Harper, for your wonderful, informative presentation on why it's so important to engage in the patient registry and how the registry information is used. We're so grateful to you for your extraordinary work and valuable time. And thank you, Gary, for sharing your personal experiences and also stressing the importance of registry participation from the patient perspective. And thank you to all of our webinar attendees today for your time and interest in learning more about the FSR Patient Registry. And if you're not already a member of the registry, we do hope that today's webinar inspired you to join this important initiative so that we can continue to enhance and elevate our research efforts. As the webinar title so eloquently states, the future of sarcoidosis research is in our hands as patients. But the research, as we know, cannot move forward without patient engagement. So again, consider joining the 5,500 patients that are already in the registry to help us gain a better understanding of the patient experience so that researchers can be more strategic in their efforts to create therapies that will have a direct impact on the lives of those living with sarcoidosis. Thanks again for your participation and helping us to expand the information about the African American survey that we are launching, as Tricia just mentioned. That's critically important. And thank you also to those who have donated so generously to FSR so that we can in turn financially support sarcoidosis research, as you heard earlier in today's webinar, including the fellowships, the pilot grants, the partnership grants, getting us closer to a better understanding, better therapies, and a cure. We're so grateful to all of you for being such valuable members of the sarcoidosis community. Thank you again for your time. And we'll be watching the registry and expect an increase in numbers after this webinar. So thank you very much for all that you're doing for the community. And thank you to the FSR team for your engagement today and leadership in putting together this webinar. Thank you.